Ever get that feeling? Like some people just, I don't know, have a different playbook for success. Like they're in on a secret the rest of us haven't quite figured out.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like they're playing with a stacked deck or something.
Right. Well, we've got this source that a listener sent in, and it claims to unlock that very secret. Excerpts from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich, a classic.
Huge, right. But we're not just skimming the surface here. We're going deep, extracting the most potent insights from these particular excerpts.
So, a focused deep dive, zeroing in on the heart of it.
Exactly. And Hill lays out his method pretty clearly. He spent decades studying hundreds of successful people, starting way back with Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie supposedly gave him get this secret formula for wealth and achievement.
Secret formula, huh? That's a bold claim right there.
No kidding. But what's really striking, just looking at the original book, are the endorsements. We're talking a former president, former chief justice, huge names like F.W. Woolworth.
Wow, so not just any endorsements, these are heavy hitters.
And they weren't just being polite, you know. They called it splendid work, praised the soundness of the principles. It really makes you think, what was it about Hill's ideas that resonated so strongly with these powerhouse figures?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. The core ideas, the actionable insights from these excerpts. We want you to walk away with a solid grasp of Hill's philosophy, feeling informed, maybe even inspired.
All without the sometimes daunting task of tackling the whole book.
Right, no need to get bogged down. So let's jump right in. The central mystery, the thing Hill builds this whole thing around, is the secret.
Yeah, the big reveal. But he plays it pretty coy.
He does. And the way he phrases it is, well, I'll just quote him directly. The secret to which I refer has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times throughout this book. It has not been directly named. It seems to work more successfully when it is merely uncovered and left in sight, where those who are ready and searching for it may pick it up. Like almost a dare, isn't it?
Yeah, he's not spoon-feeding you anything. He's saying, if you're serious, you'll find it. It's almost as if the act of actively searching is part of the secret itself.
Makes you lean in, right?
For sure. And for our listeners, folks who love those aha moments, I think by the end of this, the essence of that secret will be a lot clearer.
Subtle, but it's definitely there. So to really understand, we got to dig into the principles. And Hill kicks things off with a story, right? Edwin C. Barnes and his ambition, I guess you'd call it, related to Thomas Edison.
Oh, yeah, Barnes. He wasn't just a casual admirer.
Not at all. He had this burning desire, and it wasn't just to work for Edison, but to be his business associate. That's a whole different level. And his commitment to this, oh man, is absolute. Hill says he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominating obsession of his life, and finally a fact. Talk about laser focus. Burned all bridges. That's not messing around. No backup plan, no safety net. It's like a full-on commitment, a point of no return. Exactly. And Hill uses this imagery to emphasize just how crucial a burning desire is for achieving anything significant. You got to eliminate any thought of retreat, be all in.
It makes me think of entrepreneurs today. The ones who face rejection after rejection but keep going because they have that unshakable belief.
It's the fuel, right?
Yeah.
And then Hill brings up another powerful example, Marshall Field.
Oh, yeah, the Chicago fire story. Talk about a setback, loses his entire store.
Devastating, right? Mm-hmm. But instead of giving up, Field has this burning desire not just to rebuild, but to create the greatest store the world had ever seen on that very spot. And he does it.
So even in the face of total disaster, that intense desire can push you forward. It's almost like an unstoppable force.
Absolutely. And then Hill moves on to these twin principles. Faith and autosuggestion. How does he explain the importance of belief?
He lays it out pretty straight. He says, it is a well-known fact that one comes, finally, to believe whatever one repeats to oneself, whether the statement be true or false. Basically, what you tell yourself over and over again, you start to believe, regardless of whether it's actually true or not. Kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, the power of self-talk. And he gives this concrete tool for putting this into practice, his self-confidence formula. The first point is a declaration. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action. It's like a contract with yourself.
No wiggle room there. And that ties right into autosuggestion, which is basically the practice of deliberately influencing your subconscious mind, like planting seeds, but with thoughts.
So Repeating positive statements to yourself, even if you don't fully believe them at first, can actually change your beliefs and behaviors over time.
That's the idea. You're kind of bypassing your conscious skepticism and working on a deeper level. Hill even calls the subconscious a chemical laboratory that turns your dominant thoughts into reality, and not just positive thoughts, unfortunately. He talks about mental suicide, which is basically what happens when you constantly feed yourself negative self-talk.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah,
But it makes sense. So you got to be careful what you're telling yourself.
absolutely. But it's not just about desire and belief, right? Hill says you need knowledge, too, specifically specialized knowledge, but with a twist.
Yeah, he actually takes on the common saying, knowledge is power.
Right. He says, and I'm quoting, knowledge will not attract money unless it is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action to the definite end of accumulation of money. It's not just knowing stuff, it's knowing the right stuff and knowing how to use it.
So it's about strategy, having a plan. And he even suggests writing a brief to, like, market your services. He compares it to a lawyer prepping for a case.
And that really resonates. You wouldn't just show up in court without a strategy. Right. Same with your career, your goals.
Be prepared, know your strengths,
Yeah.
and present them effectively. He even tells this story about a woman who created this whole detailed plan book for her son to help him land a specific job. She did her research, even looked into the competition to give him an edge.
And that's brilliant. It shows that it's not just about having skills, it's about packaging and presenting them in a way that showcases your value.
It makes a huge difference. So now we get to the part about imagination, and Hill says there are actually two types.
Right. Synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Synthetic is more about combining existing ideas in new ways. Creative is, well, it's more about intuition, tapping into something truly new.
And which one does Hill say is key for, like, real breakthroughs?
Creative imagination, he says. The great leaders of business, industry, finance, and the great artists, musicians, poets, and writers became great because they developed the faculty of creative imagination. It's that ability to see beyond the obvious, to envision possibilities others haven't even considered.
It makes you think about all those aha moments, right? Where a completely new idea just pops into your head.
Exactly. And he uses a really interesting analogy to illustrate this. He tells the story of this old country doctor who had this, well, let's just call it a weird contraption involving a kettle and a paddle. And this drug clerk sees it and has this flash of insight.
He sees the potential, right? Not just the object itself.
Right. It was the idea behind it, the application that he recognized. And he turns it into this successful business venture. So it wasn't about the kettle or the paddle. It was about the creative vision.
Now, as much as individual effort is important, Hill also stresses the power of collaboration. He calls it the mastermind principle.
It's about bringing together people with different knowledge and skills, all working in harmony toward a common goal. Hill believed that truly remarkable achievements are almost never solo acts. It takes a team.
And he uses Henry Ford as a prime example, pointing to his close relationships with guys like Edison, Firestone, Burroughs, Burbank, this group of brilliant minds bouncing ideas off each other. That's what fueled Ford's success.
Yeah, it's like a think tank of sorts, a powerhouse of collective intelligence. And Hill puts it pretty directly. He says, men take on the nature and the habits and the power of thought of those with whom they associate in a spirit of sympathy and harmony.
So you become who you surround yourself with. Powerful stuff.
For sure. Choose your circle wisely.
Now, this next one might raise some eyebrows. Hill talks about the transmutation of sex energy.
Yeah, this one is a bit, shall we say, provocative.
He actually says that sex energy is the creative energy of all geniuses.
He does, and he's pretty blunt about it. There never has been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in this driving force of sex. But he's not just talking about, being promiscuous.
Right, he's talking about channeling that energy, right?
Yeah.
Transforming it into something else.
That's the key, transmutation. It's not about being overtly sexual, but about redirecting that powerful drive into other forms of intense desire and action, especially toward creative endeavors.
So taking that raw energy and focusing it on your goals. And he even says that just the memories and emotions associated with love can be a huge source of creative inspiration.
Interesting, right? It's like tapping into a primal force and using it to fuel your ambitions. It takes conscious effort, but Hill argues it's a game changer.
Okay, so we've got desire, belief, knowledge, imagination, collaboration, and, well, that powerful drive.
Yeah.
But it's not all sunshine and roses, right? Hill talks about facing our fears.
Oh, yeah. He dedicates a whole section to outwitting the ghosts of fear. He identifies 6 basic fears, and the one he calls out as the most destructive is the fear of poverty.
That makes sense. It's so ingrained in our society.
And it can be paralyzing. He explains how indecision can open the door to doubt, which then turns into fear. It's a vicious cycle.
And fear can really hold you back.
No doubt. He also talks about the fear of criticism, that one can stifle creativity, kill initiative, make you doubt yourself.
It can make you play it safe when you really need to be taking risks.
Exactly. And while he touches on other fears, like the fear of ill health, loss of love, old age, and death, the main takeaway is this: you can overcome fear. It takes decisive action.
So don't let fear dictate your choices.
Right. Make a decision and move forward. Which brings us to the importance of decisiveness and persistence.
Hill says that people who achieve great things are decisive. They make choices quickly and stick to them. He even says those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want and generally get it.
And he contrasts that with indecision, which he blames partly on education systems that sometimes encourage overthinking instead of taking action.
Interesting point. So you got to train yourself to be decisive.
For sure. But even with decisiveness, you need persistence. Hill says, without persistence, you will be defeated, even before you start. With persistence, you will win.
No matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up and keep going.
He even talks about a hidden guide who tests people through tough times. It's almost like a cosmic test of your commitment.
Those who persevere, those are the ones who ultimately succeed. Now, towards the end of these excerpts, Hill takes a wider view, focusing on American freedom and opportunity.
It's a bit of a shift in gears, but it ties in nicely with his overall message.
He starts by pointing out the abundance we have here in America, things like food, clothing, shelter, stuff we often take for granted. He even uses the example of having breakfast in New York City.
Seems simple enough, right? But behind that breakfast is this incredibly complex system of production and distribution, all made possible by organized capital.
And while he acknowledges criticisms of Wall Street and big business, he actually defends them to a certain extent.
It's important to note that Hill strives to present an impartial view. He argues that organized capital, despite its flaws, has been the driving force behind American prosperity, creating jobs, opportunities, and a standard of living that's envied around the world.
So it's about recognizing the good that comes with it, even if it's not perfect. And his point seems to be that in America, for those willing to work hard and apply the principles he outlines, the opportunities to achieve wealth and success are abundant.
It's about leveraging the system to your advantage, making the most of the freedom and resources available.
So for our listeners, those who are really trying to absorb this, let's do a quick recap. We talked about the importance of having a burning desire for what you want, fueled by unwavering faith in yourself. We discussed the need for specialized knowledge and a solid plan of action, along with the power of both synthetic and creative imagination.
And let's not forget the mastermind principle, the strength of collaboration and surrounding yourself with the right people. Plus, that idea of transmuting powerful emotions like sexual energy into creative drive.
Definitely a unique concept. And of course, we talked about overcoming fear, being decisive, and never giving up no matter the obstacles.
Persistence is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of this within a context of abundant opportunity, especially here in America. Now, think back to that secret we talked about at the beginning. Have you started to sense what it might be? It's not a single answer, but rather the combined effect of all these principles working together.
It's about internalizing these ideas and applying them in your own unique way.
So here's a question for you to ponder. What's one small but definite action you can take today, right now, that could set you on a new path or move you closer to your goals?
Or maybe think about this. If you focused on developing just one of these powers, like your creative imagination or your persistence, how might that change your trajectory?
It's all about taking action, putting these principles to work in your life.
And remember, this deep dive is just a starting point. There's a whole world of knowledge and inspiration within the full text of Think and Grow Rich. So if this resonated with you, we encourage you to explore further.
See how these ideas can work for you in your specific circumstances. It's all about taking that next step.
Absolutely. Make it happen.
On that note, until next time.
Keep thinking and growing.